Hi guys, and welcome to a Hector lecture guide to the fight P3S Phoenix. This is the third fight in the Pandaemonium raid series, and we're going to hopefully break down all the major mechanics and help you go for the clear. A couple of things before you begin. You need to agree on light parties. A little bit different than normal. You need to have 2 tanks with the DPS and 2 healers with 2 DPS. This is because you get stack markers that target 1 random tank and 1 random healer, and this is the only way to ensure they're always separate. You also need to have a partner system, so this is 1 tank or healer with 1 DPS, and they need to have an assigned waymark that they go to on one of the intercardinals. You can use those same partner groups, but you need to have an order for a line stack relative to when the boss jumps to the outside of the arena. And similar to this, you need to have an agreed side for where the tanks and healers go and where the DPS go in case it is a spread instead. Lastly, for near the end of the fight, there are what we call firestorm positions. The only thing that really needs to be agreed is which DPS is baiting a tornado out and which 3 DPS are instead baiting proximity AoEs in. So in this case, R1 is the designated tornado DPS. First up, you have Scorched Exaltation. This is a raid-wide. It hits hard-ish. It needs some mitigation, but it's not a requirement. It won't kill you without any mitigation. Heat of Condemnation is the tank buster for this fight. The way it works is that 2 random players get tethers. These need to be picked up by the main tank and the off tank and taken away because they get hit with very large AoE tank busters. They get hit quite hard, so make sure you pop some cooldowns. Similarly, as a DPS or healer, I recommend stacking together close to make this easier for the tanks to pick up, and don't move so that you don't accidentally take the tether back off of the tank. Experimental Fireplume is just like a normal mode with 1 twist. We all need to stack middle for the end of the cast bar, because if we get the large AoE that looks like this is no longer always due center. This is baited by a random player, so if you don't stack due middle, this will be off center and maybe will kill everyone. So stack due middle, and as soon as you see that, get out. If instead, when you see Experimental Fireplume, after stacking middle, you see the spinning small orbs, this is a Shiva-style mechanic, so you see a bunch of orbs explode around the outside, and you just move to where either the first or second set went. Boss follows this up with a left or right Cinderwing. It's going to cleave that side relative to the boss, so go to the other side. Then we get Darkened Fire. This is going to spawn those orbs that we saw in normal mode, but they spawn under either all the tanks and healers or all the DPS. So what we do is we do our partner stacks on the intercardinals so that we can spawn them where we want them to, which is on these intercardinals. They need to be close enough that we can hit 2 of them with one of our circles we're getting in a second, but they need to be far enough away that they don't tether. If they tether, they will instantly explode and will almost certainly wipe the raid. Afterwards, Brightened Fire is going to give us those white circles to kill these, and we get everybody getting a marker from 1 to 8. Oh joy. Numbers again. I'm going to move 5 to 8 out of the way to make this easier to see. 1 to 4, I recommend just put on waymarks. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what's key is they need to be cleaving 2 of the adds with their circle. Now, what this does leave is a nice little safe spot in the middle, if you're far enough out, where 5 through 8 can hide. And so if you want to minimize the amount of healing you have to do, what you do is once 1 gets hit, it's kind of similar to Diamond Weapon, 1 and 5 swap, 2 and 6 swap, 3 and 7 swap, and 4 and 8 swap. And then the explosions go around, and so everybody only takes 1 hit. This means that there will be no healing required during the mechanic, and you can put all your efforts on DPSing these orbs down. They have an invulnerability on them until they get hit with enough of these AoE circles. And as soon as you see they're vulnerable, you need to be DPSing them down because they're all casting Darkened Blaze throughout this, and if at any point in time they finish that cast before they are dead, they give off a huge raid-wide damage. 1 explosion can be survived with light mitigation, 2 explosions is a guaranteed wipe. If the swap between 1 and 5, 2 and 6 was too challenging for your group, note that with a light amount of healing, you can just stack 1 and 5 together, 2 and 6 together, 3 and 7 together, 4 and 8 together. It's more intensive on the healers, but it requires less movement, so it might be ideal for your party. But kill the orbs in time before they explode, and you're finished with this mechanic. Get the group together, because there's another Heat of Condemnation tank buster. Have the tanks deal with this exactly the same as before. And then a Scorched Exaltation raid-wide. Now, Devouring Brand is next, and just like in normal mode, this is going to lead to the fire AoEs on the Cardinals that are going to slowly grow in towards middle. What this is combined with is an Experimental Fireplume. So we all stack middle to bait. And now what we're going to do is we want to all go to the same corner for uptime's sake. So we are if this was an out, we would always go to one corner, say A. If it's a Shiva instead, you have to look at where the AoEs hit first. They are always going to hit inner cardinals first, and so you're looking at either A or, say, B, and agreeing to go to whichever one of those two gets hit first. So in this pattern here, B gets hit first, so everybody's going to move to B first. But if instead, just to rewind, if instead A was to get hit first, everybody goes and dodges towards A. Key that once the group dodges this, they all hug the edge for the time being because the boss casts Searing Breeze. This is going to drop puddle AoEs underneath everyone. As soon as you see those, dodge inwards. There should be a small safe spot in before you hit where the cardinals are now deadly. Be prepared for a very quick left or right Cinder Wing, so dodge. And then preferably immediately stack up everybody except for the tanks, because there's a Heart of Condemnation, and you want the tanks to be able to pick those up and get away from the party with ease. Afterwards, a very quick experimental Fireplume, so dodge towards the middle and deal with either the out or Shiva mechanic. As this goes off, the boss jumps away and reappears on the side of the arena, ready to do a dive bomb. Now, in preparation for this, I recommend always going into your partner stack groups in line in the agreed upon order, who's nearest to the boss, who's furthest away. But then you need to look at the boss. If the two side heads glow, this is signifying they're going to cleave on the sides and the middle is safe, and so where you are right now is perfectly safe. You stay and you soak partner stacks. If instead the middle head is glowing, the boss is going to cleave the middle and you get hit by spreads, so instead you go to your agreed upon spread positions. Finally, the boss reappears, but only for a second before becoming untargetable, and 4 Sunburn ads spawn. Now, tanks should each pick up 2 of these Sunburn ads and drag them to a cardinal, preferably one that's 90 degrees away from each other to allow easier access to uptime in case one bird dies early. And they want to focus down 1 bird each, because you want to kill those birds on a cardinal before dragging the others to a completely different cardinal to continue. Be aware that there's pretty heavy tank damage throughout this, as well as light party damage that's constantly going off, so healers watch out. And if you manage to kill the 4 ads separate from each other, you want to immediately run to the middle to heal up before a raid-wide hits. These ads must be far enough away, otherwise, after this raid-wide, the new ads that take their place let off those same green circles from normal mode. If these are covering 2 ads, then they get buffed, and those ads are going to start killing the party. Now, there's only really one mechanic in this ad phase. What we get is each of the ads is going to do this. They're going to tether to a tank or a tank healer or a DPS, and then they're going to tether to another player. And these are your familiar red-purple tethers, where they're red if you're too close to what you're tethered to and you're going to die, and purple if you've stretched the tether far enough. So just to show one by one how we're going to do this, what you do is you have whichever player is tethered to the ad go directly opposite and to the side of the ad, and whichever player is tethered to another player, just go opposite that player. So if we do all of these, your final pattern looks a little something like this. Very important that whoever's tethered to the ads leaves themselves a little bit room to dodge backwards, because after they get hit, they want to move back just a smidgen so they don't get clipped by the second one. Also, don't stand too close to the side of your ad so that on the first dash you don't get cleaved by the ad on the way. The ads are now going to dash to the player they're tethered to. Those players are going to slide out just a smidgen, and then they tether to the other player. And as long as these tethers were all purple and you don't get clipped by 2, you should all survive. Healers immediately look out. Everybody's taking a lot of damage, but afterwards, tanks are going to gather 2 ads each cardinal, DPS down like crazy, kill 1 at each cardinal, and drag them to the others. This is a pretty tight DPS check, especially in Week 1 gear. You might want to consider using pots to be able to enable your group to get through this, or think about clever ways that you can take advantage of AoE abilities to kill more of them. If all 4 of the ads die before they enrage, stack middle for a very hard-hitting raid-wide. And if they're spread far enough that none of those circles contain 2, then when the boss returns, it casts Dead Rebirth, which is an ultimate attack, and while it does insanely high raid-wide damage that needs to be mitigated, it will not wipe the party. If you've survived that, you're on to the final phase of the fight. Heat of Condemnation is again a tank buster with it the exact same way as before. And now we get Fledgling Flight. Similar to normal mode, we're going to get those 4 little eyeball ads. Unlike normal mode, these are going to be spawned in location by players themselves. This is very similar to the E10S dropping shadows mechanic, if you've done that fight, but simpler in my mind, because all you need to do for this first one is your eye has a fixed position that it faces, face it outwards. So showing there's where main tank would go, there's where the off tank would go, and here's where the healers are going to drop there. So you can see that they're all facing to the outwards. These shoot off conal AoEs, so now everybody could just go middle, and their AoEs are harmless. And the mechanic's over. Experimental Gloryplume is very similar to Experimental Fireplume. You still stack middle. You still get the key either large out or Shiva-style red AoEs. But this is combined with another dark red AoE. If you see these small circles, this is signifying at the end of the mechanic you need to spread. So in this case, we would deal with the Shiva-style mechanic, as we've done. And then immediately spread. If instead we see the first red AoE, so it's Shiva again, but this time we see the large black-red fire circle. This instead is those party stacks we talked about before, so tanks and melees need to dodge together, ranged and healers need to dodge together. Just agree upon a location, so who's going which side, northwest for one group, southeast for the other group, and take it together as a party stack. Next mechanic is a very complicated one. This is Fountain of Fire. I recommend pre-positioning one light party sort of in one cardinal, intercardinal, and the other light party in the opposite. First, you get two sets of towers. These appear either north-south or east-west. Each of these needs to be soaked by a healer. Soaking this tower gives you a damage buff, which is nice, but more importantly, it gives a heal-up buff. That's why your healers need to take it, because there's going to be a ton of damage, and that's going to make this way easier for the healers to heal through everything. At the same time, you'll notice that the two tanks are inside the hitbox and nobody else is. That's because as the healers soak their towers, the tanks, as the closest two players, get targeted with a proximity AoE. There's going to be 3 sets of these. We just need to agree on an order, so my group does tanks, melees, ranged. Tanks take the first one, and what we have them do is they take that just outside of the tower. So they're just north and just below, just slightly in from the healer towers. Their AoEs go off, and it drops a bird ad on them. And the healer's tower goes off and they rotate to the next one. Now, what the tanks have done here, just to rewind a second, is these birds tether to the tanks, and they need to, just like an ad phase, pull these tethers opposite. All they're going to do is run directly opposite. So now when those tethers go off, the birds will dash to them and only them, and everybody else will be perfectly fine. At the same time, melees have gone in as they're the second group to bait the AoEs. They pull theirs out. Now, tons is going to happen all at once. Melees are going to get hit with their AoEs, and birds are going to appear. The birds that already are here are going to dash for the tanks, and the healers are going to soak their towers. We're all positioned so that nobody's going to get hit by the birds, nobody gets hit by those AoEs, nobody soaks the towers but the healers. Birds dash, AoEs go off, new birds spawn, healer towers go up, and healers rotate to the next. Ranged are already pre-positioned in middle to take the second set of tower proximity AoEs, and everything happens exactly the same as before, it's just rotated clockwise. Everybody gets a fire damage vulnerability up debuff as part of doing their job, which means that nobody can do more than one mechanic without dying to it. Now, if you've done everything right, and you're all alive, this is followed up with 2 Scorched Exaltation stacks, stacks, raid wides. These would normally be a pain to heal through, but since your healers have absurd heal up buffs, if you have your shield healer just pop a simple shield onto the party, you'll find that it will be more than enough to cover both of these raid wides and then some. Heat of Condemnation goes off, and the tanks deal with it exactly the same way as before. And now we got our last real major combo mechanic, Firestorms of Asphodelos. We have our parties immediately group up with one light party in front of the boss, one light party behind. We've got melees behind for positionals, and 3 fire tornadoes appear. The boss is going to start casting Experimental Ashplume, which is just going to, at the end of the cast, tell us do we have a stack or spread, and you're going to see 3 conal AoEs. They go off 1, 2, 3. We're going to do a 3-to-1 dodge. So we stand on the third AoE and we dodge into the first one while looking at the Experimental Ashplume tell. Here it's saying that it's going to be those light party stacks. So we stay in our light parties and we soak the stacks together. This could have been a spread instead. You just make sure after the 3-to-1 dodge that you have your group spread out. Afterwards, Flames of Asphodelos means that the attacks are going to repeat. So we get the same 1, 2, 3. We still dodge 3-to-1. But this time, while dodging 3 to 1, the boss is casting Storms of Asphodelos, so we're going to move towards our fire tornado positions from agreed upon at the beginning of the video. These look like this. Here's what's happened. Each of the healers is hugging one of the fire tornadoes because they are baiting sort of a living liquid style conal AoE at them. Whoever's closest to the tornado gets it. Each healer takes a tornado, and we have one marked DPS who's designed to take the other tornado. Those look like this. The 3 other DPS are close to the boss, either in or very near to being in the hitbox, because they're going to bait Protean Wave style AoEs, so these are cone AoEs who target whoever's nearest to them. As long as they're the 3 nearest players, they target them and hit nobody else. They're positioned specifically in between the tornadoes so that nobody gets cleaved. Lastly, the tanks are dealing with the same style of tank buster they've dealt with all fight. We have them go near to a tornado, but very importantly, not nearer than the healer that is hugging that tornado. Because if they are nearer, they will bait the conal AoE and die and possibly kill others with it. There's what their AoEs look like if it's the same circle AoEs as before. If all of this goes right, here's what all your AoE should look like together, and you should hopefully dodge everything. Just get hit by one. Next up, Darkblaze Twister. The boss is going to tether to each of these tornadoes, and only one of those tethers is going to be sort of purpley black. That tether is very important. That one is going to cause a knockback from the tornado at the end of this mechanic. So we position clockwise from that tornado, and we get ready to bait our first set of Searing Breeze puddles. There's 4 puddles altogether, and we bait them in sort of a clockwise circle, circling back towards the purple tether. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as the 4th one goes off, the boss is going to cast Experimental Ash Plume to show you whether or not we're getting a stack or a party stacks or spread at the end of this. The light party's position for knockback, because you won't be able to adjust in time usually to whether or not it's a stack or spread. This time it's going to be party stacks. And the party gets knocked back towards the other 2 tornadoes, which are going to get with a donut AoE. The party stacks go off, and if you've positioned your knockback correctly, you've lived. There's a Scorched Exaltation raid-wide before the final new mechanic of the fight, Death's Toll. Big purple explosion goes off, and everybody gets a debuff with either 1, 2, or 4 stacks. We're going to come back to this debuff. For now, I'm going to remove them, so we can talk about what we do with Fledgling Flight. These are going to give us the same eyeball adds as before, but now the only difference is we're going to position them facing inwards instead. The reason we do this is because of those debuffs. Death's Toll debuff requires you to die that many times. To do that, we're going to deliberately get hit by the eyeball's AoE attacks. If you have 1 stack, you stand directly behind one of the eyeballs. Doesn't matter if it's the same or a different one, just you need to be behind an eyeball. The reason this is that the conal AoEs are going to target in front of them, and this means you'll only get hit by the eyeball opposite you. Those with 2 stacks are going to stand on an intercardinal. This will guarantee that they get hit by exactly 2 eyeball attacks. Those with 4 go directly in the middle. The people with 4 stacks are going to get hit by all 4 eyeball attacks. These eyeball attacks in real time go off 1 at a time, so you can see how it works. So wait until all 4 attacks go off to move from your assigned positions. Immediately after that, your debuffs are cleansed, but you need to go middle to get topped up because Life's Agonies requires you to be full health to live. Healers need to pre-plan a way to heal through this, unless you have an Astro. If you have an Astro, press Macrocosmos and everybody's fine. Pray you have an Astro. Experimental, everything for the rest of this fight is now repeated mechanics. You get an Experimental Gloryplume, which is the fire orbs combined with the darker black orbs. In this case, it's Shiva followed by spread. So just like we showed before, dodge the Shiva, preferably in light parties, so that you can then have more room to immediately spread. The boss appears on one side for a random dive bomb, position for your party stacks, and wait to see whether or not it's cleaving the sides or the middle. In this case, it's cleaving the sides, so stay where you are, stay stacked with your partner. And then a Devouring Brand, so stack to middle, ready for the Experimental Fireplume cast. Wait to see if it's Shiva or out. In this case, it's Shiva, so now look to see if A or B gets cleaved first. A gets cleaved first, so the party's going to move towards A. Hug the side, wait for the Searing Breeze puddles, dodge those puddles. A Cinderwing. And finally, 2 Scorched Exaltation Raid Wides and a Final Exaltation Enrage. That's it. If you manage to kill the boss and DPS it down, you have successfully completed P3S. Good luck. I hope that this guide helps you and your group get towards the clear. Thanks for watching.